It's deadly and it could be in your living room. Invisible, odourless and tasteless. Carbon monoxide is a silent killer, a lethal gas that can be produced by, among other things, wrongly installed or badly maintained heaters. And if it doesn't kill you, chronic exposure to carbon monoxide can make you sick, with symptoms like the flu. Anna Kenner has the story.
The most frightening thing was my heart. My heart felt like it was missing beats, but it was racing so fast.
Yeah, it has 8 levels in it, has this master at the end of it.
Amanda Pickard and her son Troy enjoy a winter's afternoon in their half-finished Waikanae home. The paint and the wallpaper they can live without. What's harder to cope with is winters without heating. Their gas fire was disconnected 2 years ago, because Pickard claims it was slowly poisoning her and Troy.
It got to a stage whereby we'd be running out of the bed, down the hallway, whichever way we were going to a toilet, because he was projectile vomiting.
So this is the heater?
It is, Anna, but this is more important. It's what's on the back.
5 years ago, Amanda Pickard wouldn't have known the front end of a heater from the back. Now she's made it her business to understand, especially about the danger signs.
This is evidence of spillage. As I say, it's the fingerprint of what's been going on. The fire's not combusted, and what that means is that nothing was going up the flue. And I mean, it's just too upsetting to look at, because you can actually see that it's coming down the back, and it would just, the fumes, whatever they are, would just go across the hearth. And Troy, as a wee 7-year-old, would lay on the hearth, on the carpet.
Why keep it if it upsets you so much?
This is our evidence of what's happened here, and I'm sure that this has happened to more people in New Zealand. And hopefully tonight they will be aware of what happens if an installation goes wrong.
Life was full of promise in 1997 when Pickard and her former husband moved an old villa onto their Kapiti Coast property. It's a beautiful house, but obviously you've still got a bit to do.
We've got heaps to do, but I mean, it took us 3 years to begin with.
Now renovations are at a standstill, as the qualified speech and drama teacher deals with a drama of her own.
Everything stopped as soon as we started getting sick.
It all began with the installation of a gas fire. Right from the start, Pickard says there were problems. Persistent gas smells. Then there was Troy's illness.
Imagine a tiny little 7-year-old who's holding that bowl of the toilet, and he's shaking, he's upset, he's frightened, he's apologising for being sick. He throws his head back, his eyes, you see the whites of his eyes, and then it just comes out. I've never seen anything like it in my life.
Troy is now 11, a talented musician and cricket player. His mother shudders when she remembers how one night 4 years ago he was rushed to Wellington Hospital by ambulance because he was so ill.
It was most distressing in the back of the ambulance that night. He was red. But then as a mummy you'd just think it's a high temperature. You know, I can see his glowing red ears. Yeah, he was red. Glazed eyes.
But as well as dealing with her sick son, Amanda Pickard started having health problems of her own.
My heart was racing. I had a headache. I felt most strange. And the next day I woke up feeling like it. And you hear this little voice, and it's like, danger, there's something wrong with you. And I had to say to my little boy, I was actually sat on the kitchen floor, and I had to say to him, if Mummy tells you to ring 111, you're going to need to do it. And now I can't talk anymore.
Amanda's symptoms were put down to anxiety. Things came to a head one chilly April day when Amanda was overwhelmed by the smell of gas in her lounge. Another gas fitter traced the leak to a loose connection behind the heater, but that's not all he found.
Well, he came into the lounge and he took the front of the fire off, and then he just turned around and looked at Mum and Dad and me, and he said, has anybody been sick? Because I believe you've been carbon monoxide poisoned.
Carbon monoxide is produced when a fire isn't burning properly. Telltale signs include sooty stains like these on the back of Amanda Pickard's heater. Tests later revealed why her fire wasn't burning properly. First of all, the flue was too short, way below the recommended standard. This is after it was extended to its right length. Another reason, this adapter which had been put on the back of the fire to make it fit the flue. The heater has a rectangular outlet, but the flue, which was made for another model of fire, is circular. The adapter was riveted onto the back of the fire and then slotted into the flue. But what should have been a solution turned out to be a big problem. Independent tests showed the adapter restricted the fire getting rid of toxic fumes.
It actually said in the report that with the fire in such a state and operating in such a state, that there was obviously, it wasn't combusting and it was producing excess soot, which is carbon monoxide poisoning.
We have only just recently got the report on the Appliance.
Phil Rowthen, chairman of the Plumbers, Gasfitters and Drain Layers Board, which has had Amanda Pickard's complaint about her gas fitter for nearly 2 years.
And the investigator is shortly to make a recommendation to the Plumbers, Gasfitters and Drain Layers Board as to whether it should take disciplinary action in this case.
And while they're deliberating, Rowthen says he can't talk to us about Amanda's case. How typical is this case of gas fitting standards out there?
I don't think it's typical. The public should be confident that in most cases, provided they use a licensed gas fitter, that they should rest comfortably.
So what have you got written down so far, Levy?
Amanda Pickard did use a licensed gas fitter, but it hasn't brought her any comfort. On her own with a young son to raise, she's fed up waiting for answers. She's suing the gas fitter and the manufacturer of the fire.
They're damn lucky that we are alive and that we did walk away from this.
Not so lucky was 24-year-old Emily Johnston of Wellington. Emily died as a result of carbon monoxide poisoning in 1998 while house-sitting for friends.
She was a wonderful, bright, fun girl. She loved life.
Emily's stepmum Val and father Barry Johnston.
She was very talented in many areas, wasn't she? She was a singer, she was a writer. She was full of fun, she was vivacious, she had lots of friends.
Enormous presence.
An enormous presence, yes. You always knew when she was around.
Emily singing at their wedding, among the cherished memories Barry and Val have left. Since Emily's death, Barry has developed speech problems, believed to be a result of profound grief. The night she died, Emily called off going to a concert with her family because she wasn't well. She said she was going home to have a nice long bath. Was she in the habit of having long hot baths as a way of relaxing?
Yes. And reading. A great reader. And, she went with the glass of wine and the book and intending to stay for hours and the bath full.
That relaxing pastime cost Emily Johnston her life. An inquest found she drowned after succumbing to carbon monoxide from a faulty gas water heater. The old-style heater, like this, wasn't working properly because debris from a disintegrating flue had blocked it, causing it to produce excessive carbon monoxide. In the small bathroom, with the door shut, Emily didn't stand a chance. What was your reaction to confirmation that it was the gas heater? Was it relief, horror?
Horror, really? Horror. It was just seemed incredible that could happen. Horror.
Did you feel cheated in a way?
Yep.
Oh, yes. Yes. Like losing such a wonderful girl, like losing a life unnecessarily. It seemed that it's something that should never have happened.
And that was also the belief of the coroner, After a 2.5-year investigation into Emily's death, Wellington coroner Gary Evans called for greater training for gas fitters, especially in recognising carbon monoxide hazards.
Even though we had gas fitters in here,
Debbie Rawson owns the house in which Emily died.
the room was too small, there was no adequate ventilation in the door, and the flue was too short. And so that was what made it fatal.
Had gas fitters ever raised any concerns about the lack of ventilation,
No.
the smallness of the room, the state of the flue?
No, never.
A number of things have happened since then.
Phil Rowthen says the trade has done much to address the coroner's concerns over Emily Johnston's death.
We have listed the symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning to our gas fitters, so we made them aware of it. We have written personally to every gas fitter in New Zealand highlighting the dangers of carbon monoxide poisoning, and we have also circulated a list to those same gas fitters of where equipment is available throughout New Zealand for testing for carbon monoxide gas, and we have gone further and suggested that the equipment for testing should be a standard part of every licensed gas fitter's equipment.
Val Johnston likes to think that Emily's death has shaken up the gas industry, but the message, she believes, hasn't got out to the public. After Emily's death, the Johnstons had their own gas heater checked.
And we found that there were bricks and a build-up of soot blocking the flue.
And did he say that that situation could have caused carbon monoxide to be coming into the room?
Yeah, it was possible. He couldn't be sure, but it was likely that without adequate ventilation we could have been suffering some effects of it, yes.
At that stage, were you suffering any health effects?
I was.
How did you feel when you realised that you possibly could have been subjecting yourself to the same thing that poisoned Emily?
I was horrified.
While deaths like Emily's are very rare, it's believed a lot of people suffer the symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning, headaches, fatigue and nausea, without realising they're gas fires to blame.
Well, I noticed that I was feeling sick and queasy after I'd had baths, but I never ever put it down to the gas car fire. And I ended up just taking shorter and shorter baths.
Do you think the average person is aware of this carbon monoxide issue?
No, I think people are completely ignorant.
If you were to ask me, is every consumer aware, then of course the answer is I don't know.
Tony Leviton from Energy Safety Services. He admits, given more resources and the cooperation of other agencies, more could be done to make the public aware of key gas safety messages.
Ensuring that installations are competently handled, installed by licensed craftsman gas fitters, ensuring that they are well maintained, regularly maintained, and ensuring that they operate in terms of gas anyway, operate in a well ventilated area. I think those three key messages are very important for all the affected agencies to push.
Energy Safety puts out a lot of written material on gas safety, but it's pretty tame compared to what's aimed at the British public. And authorities there have shown just how tough they can be.
2 men have been jailed for manslaughter after a student was killed by fumes from a faulty gas boiler.
The government is introducing new legislation to try to reduce the number of deaths from carbon monoxide poisoning.
Now more than 1 million British homes have installed carbon monoxide detectors. And while the UK is doing its bit to alert the community, here in New Zealand the issue appears to be on the back burner. Despite a huge increase in gas installations, 300,000 in the last 10 years, and despite the fact that here in New Zealand we use gas appliances that other countries have long banned. LPG heaters used in 500,000 New Zealand homes aren't allowed in Australia, Canada and parts of the US. These and other unflued gas heaters release pollutants, including carbon monoxide, directly into the room and can aggravate asthma and chest conditions.
Provided they're used in well-ventilated spaces, then they are perfectly adequate.
And that was the view 10 years ago, when decision makers rejected a call by the Ministry of Health to take unflued gas heaters off the New Zealand market. But concerns persist. Just last year, this from the Public Health Advisory Committee.
The committee questions why New Zealand continues to allow the sale of unvented gas appliances with few or no warnings to consumers of the increased risks to health.
If Emily was still here and she was talking about the death of somebody else through carbon monoxide poisoning, what would she say, do you think?
Probably the same.
Yes, she would want us to do this. She would want people to know, and she would not want anyone else to suffer if it could be prevented.
And with what she's learnt over the last couple of years, Amanda Pickard's also on a mission to educate New Zealanders about the dangers of the so-called silent killer. And she's determined to make somebody accountable for what she and Troy have been through.
I'd be at peace if I know that the safety of New Zealand changes as a result of what I've found and what we're talking about. If they follow the lead of UK and the States, I mean, they've done it for a reason. They recognise that carbon monoxide needs to be made aware to the public. Now, I think New Zealand should.
We should point out, if your heater has been properly installed and maintained, there's nothing to worry about. But if you're concerned your appliance might be faulty, you should contact an experienced gas fitter. We're back in a moment.